Hey, folks. Happy New Year. It's 2024 finally. Um, I pulled I don't know. Yeah, I have a hard time putting words to this stuff, primarily because I ain't really slept. I didn't really sleep. I took about a 2 hour nap or so. And then I was driving from like 4 o'clock. And then I finally bowed out. Uber had some kind of opportunity where they give you more money if you do, have more rides or whatever. I finally bowed out about 11. I got to go home. I'm tired. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sleep as long as my body allows me to sleep. But I felt it. I'm seeing I'm seeing the interest go up. There's like surges and whatnot. I'm like, man, but I'm too tired to drive. And one of the things that is on the Uber community guideline is that you shouldn't be drowsy driving. And I think that that's been happening, and it bothers me. I know why it's happening, and I don't want to do that. But I do want to say a couple of things before I post what I did at the end of my designated driver for New Year's. Number one, everybody, I think this was at least in Atlanta, it was a pretty good year. There weren't a lot of accidents and so on and so forth. But I can admit that I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but I do know it needs to be done. And what I'm saying here is, this form of expression, that's not me writing. I've always wanted to be a writer. I say that, and then I'm reminded for various reasons that I've always been a writer. I got published in the Atlanta Journal Constitution. At the time it was Atlanta Constitution. It was a Sunday night edition, a piece that I wrote for a class for my senior year in the last semester. We had to interview, someone in the class or anyone, and I interviewed someone about them being a tennis champion. You can read it yourself. It's there. I was 18 years old. I didn't even know it was published. So for so long, I have built my identity around wanting to do something that, frankly, I had already done. Around feeling that I needed permission. There you go. I needed permission to do the kinds of expressions that I wanted to do. And, I've been given a lot of like tips, like, maybe like this person, maybe like that person. And I'm not going to give, I don't need to call names on who did what and when and where. I mean, eventually, I guess maybe so. But this is not a tell-all, right? You could say this is some kind of like autoethnography or some kind of like memoir, or some people, for some of the work I do, like the question of creative nonfiction. I like the idea of being a professional sociologist. Number one, because no one respects sociology as a field, as a organization, as a institution that people can actually personify. But it is. And if anything, the use of sociological and social science and sociology by lay people is, number one, a reflection of just how well the discipline has advertised itself, how well it's been institutionalized within these other, educational spaces, where I think there's even like high school, spaces where people are learning sociology. So that's good. So sociology is the study of society. It's anything. It's everywhere. And I do believe that some folks don't feel like they can talk about X, Y, and Z because they're not an expert in it. But I'm just being real with you. If you have a sociology degree, if you've taken a sociology class, you can talk about society. Frankly, if you haven't, you can do it. The difference that the sociology discipline gives us, it does give us some cues. It gives us some frames, some ways of sorting things out that can be helpful as we go through. And I will not lie to you that those things are going to be embedded in how I show up within this new kind of expressive order. But sometimes they won't. sometimes it really is probably memoir and ethnography and so on and so forth. Sometimes it's just me being trying to be funny. Sometimes it's me trying to be deep. Sometimes it's me being surprised. So in any case, I was able to get 7 minutes. I was only 5 minutes, but I got to 7 minutes before something with me. I am not, as much as I was an early adopter of technology. Yeah, not my tea. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I can understand that there are many forms. There's radio, there's podcasts, there's video. There is still writing, although I am not going to lie, I am shutting down my Voice of Consciousness blog. Number one, Google is kind of translating or transitioning to something different. Number two, it is actually really difficult for me to physically write because of the health challenges that I've experienced over the last couple of years. And so, it's if I had to spend time actually physically writing, I have to dedicate that to the scientific writing I'm doing. If I am in a place where I just have I need to write. I'm a journal. I journal all the time. I've been journaling my whole life. Some people consider it as stream of consciousness writing. Okay, fine. Everything's fine. If there's a way to take that, right? And there's a lot of notability, otter. There's all these ways that you can take what you see on the paper, what you're creating on paper, and make it into something that other people can see as you're putting it, right? So to the extent that I can do that, I'll do that. And that remains that really more handwriting forms. And maybe there's other things that I can do. But one of the things that happened over the last 24 hours was wanting to mark an end to something. And of course, I'm marking the end to a period of disease that is, now we know is rooted in a series of allergenic responses to a whole host of things. I asked the question though, am I really allergic to it? Or was I created and developed and grew up in an environment that my body was sensitive to? And so it just said no and everything shut down. I think it's the latter, but I don't know. And I'm not a doctor. And if there is a doctor in the house, please come through and let me understand some stuff. But what I understand, I don't think I was born with a bunch of allergies. I do think my lungs were probably a little something, whatever. They give you all these drugs. Things don't develop the way they do. But I don't think that I am a sickly person. I was made sick. And it's the reason why I study health disparities. It's the reason why I study, hi folks, it's the reason why I study racism. Is because I didn't understand why I was so different. And then to find out after all these years that what I thought was different, what I thought was sick, was just a response to the environment. Is that not sociology? That's sociology, but that's not a sociology that I learned in a book. Me say the word me search is not really research. Oh, yes, it is. It is, because if you're actually studying society, where does that society actually begin? It begins with you. The very fact that you said, I want to look at something, you looking, gazing at it puts you at an objective space, even though that space you're in is your own. Okay. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of room to mess up, to not be professional, to have my hair looking kind of wild today. My mom's like, yo, you need to do your hair. I'm like, I don't have time to do hair. I used to have time. Now I don't have time. You have time. The time you have is the time that you make. And I know that one of the times I make that I don't even think about is sitting in my car. My car is my safe space. And when I'm come home from a stress day, I will sit there for 30, 40, 50, an hour or more. I'll go there when I'm really frustrated. I'm thinking I'm going to go to a place and I just end up just sitting in my car. So it's a support system for me. And that's a part of why Driving While Atlanta can exist as it is. But I don't think it's just about driving while Atlanta. I'm not going to lie about that. I love Atlanta. But my life isn't just Atlanta. And even me being here doesn't make it about Atlanta. A good chunk of my life is about seeing the South as an object because I left it. I left the South. I left Atlanta. Now I can see Atlanta. I left the South, and now I can see the South. I left things, and then in the hindsight, I can see it more clearly than when I was in it. And I assumed coming out of high school that everybody had a black Mecca. I assumed that everybody had a percent black neighborhood of 90%. And I left and I was like, oh, this is how people actually live. That's not fun. Or, I mean, could it be? You got to figure it out, right? You need a reference point. But there are other things I want to say, and I don't want it to be restricted to a particular topic because that's the voice that I can link to today, So I am motivated by Amanda Seales, and I when I read it, I was like, Jesus, she builds herself as a comedian or an actress. I'm not an actress. I try to be a comedian. I have all kinds of jokes, but I don't really know what that concept is that I am in. I know I'm a researcher. I'm not a researcher first. I know I'm a writer. I am a writer first. I want to be a comedian. That's, goals, but maybe it's actually not a goal, right? I got into public speaking early, but not in the way that most people think, right? It's actually an atypical story. But in the end, the reason why I start from the place of sociology is because it's the one box that doesn't have a boundary. It doesn't have a lid. It's a box that don't even have a ground to sit on. It's like kind of interesting there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get off and I'm going to, I guess, post this. I think that's how it's going to work. And then I'm going to try to add in it's about 7 minutes that I did from after, well, you'll see it, while charging my Tesla. It's not my Tesla, by the way. It's Hertz's Tesla, but another story. And then it gets cut off in the middle before I'm about to go into something. And that something can be picked up on at some other point in time. What I do know is that I love digital stuff. I love pictures and so on and so forth. And so I do see part of what I'm doing right now is to recreate an analytical view of things that it actually involved more than me and you looking at each other, more than me looking at the screen. So using maps, using pictures, talking to other people, so on and so forth. That's stuff that you kind of need to script. And I'm going to tell you that I'm being honest with you right here. I think I get lost when I don't connect to people. I get lost. I was a kid. I used to get lost all the time. People lose me. I lose myself. So talking to folks, being connected to you in this way allows me to place into action these ideas that always have been there. But if I don't say it, I believe this. I know you listened to Audre Lorde speak knowing you were not meant to survive. I don't really know if I believe the not meant to survive part, but speaking, absolutely. Speaking because you're not supposed to, or, in your anger, whatever that is, when you speak to something, it becomes activated. It becomes real. So what I am trying to do is I'm trying not to lose all of these things that are in my head that I haven't been able to write down because of actual physical health problems and barriers. And if I can't write it down, which is what I've always done, then the only way that I can express it is through my voice. So I know it's going to come off as like you just talking. I know it's going to come off as self-absorbed. I think someone called me egotistical, something like that. It's something like, I don't know, it starts with an A, but whatever. People call me ways, things and stuff, and it's hurtful, honestly, but I understand where they're coming from. It arrogant, that's the one. Ooh, that was hard. I understand where they're coming from, but I think it's not a response because I don't need to qualify myself. But it is true that I was born on the stage. I was not born on a paper. I learned how to talk before I learned how to write. When I started to write, I was like, oh, wow, I can actually start to put things that I can't say explicitly onto paper. And then that becomes a different way for me to talk. So this is just part of that. I understand it may come off in a way that is not, people do not want to engage, and that's fine. You don't have to. But this is me giving. This is me putting things into the air, and whether they come back or they don't come back is not the problem, nor is it the solution. The solution, and I actually encourage young folks on this, is just to express yourself. All right. Good times, y'all.